And welcome back to centralcoastradio.com. Well, with a brand new music biopic in cinemas right now, we thought this might be a good time to go back and look at our favorite films that are about music. Not films that are musicals, but films that go back and take a look at the life of a musician or a fictitious musician even. So to kick it off this time, Lee, what is your favorite films that focus around musicians?
All right. Well, I've got a couple that I really enjoy. Um, some of them a bit newer, some of them a bit older. So I'm going to go with first A Star is Born. Now, that is a more recent movie, of course. It's a remake, though.
Yeah.
There are older versions.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm going to go with the 2018 version of this film with Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga. And yeah, obviously it follows the story of Ellie, who is played by Lady Gaga, becoming a star, and Jack, a musician who played by Bradley Cooper, helps her to become that star along the way. But through that, you have his story as well, and the difficulties he has with alcoholism, mental health, all those things. And yeah, but through it all, there is fantastic music, I have to say.
And you've seen all the costumes as well up at Movie World.
I
They had all the
have. I
costumes.
saw when they had them all come in,
Yep.
and they were all, you could take photos of them and look at them in person. And yeah, it was just amazing to see that in person.
And one of the other stars of that film, of course, is and you got to do this voice right, Sam Elliott.
True. Yeah, so I didn't actually know Bradley Cooper could sing until that movie.
Yep.
I don't think I knew that. So I was quite blown
Yeah, I
away.
remember having that reaction thinking, Bradley Cooper?
And I was
Wait,
like,
isn't
is
it
he
saying it's
really
about a
singing or is
musician? I'm
he
like, yeah.
miming? No, he is actually doing it. Um, yeah, so there's some really good songs, as I mentioned. And I think, yeah, some of the performance, of course, Lady Gaga, she blows away the stage whenever you hear her. But Bradley Cooper's songs also were pretty amazing. So I liked songs like Too Far Gone, I'll Never Love Again. There's so many in this. Always Remember Us This Way. Look What I Found. It's just a whole soundtrack. In fact, I got the soundtrack on CD because I still have a CD player in my car. Most people don't these days, but I insist on having one because I've got so many CDs. And it was just one that I played over and over and over and just sang it and probably learnt every word to every song too. So the other ones, and I obviously am not going to name every song on every album, but Raise Your Voice from 2004. Now, that is more of a young people's film again, because I'll never grow up and I will always love those sorts of films. And that is a film with Hilary Duff, John Corbett, and a whole cast of other people as well. And it follows a young person, Teresa or Terry, played by Hilary Duff, who wants to go to a music school and study music in an academy and faces difficulties. Her family doesn't want her to go, but she has to move to Los Angeles and spend the summer at a performing arts school, really. And so there's the difficulties of her family not wanting her to go. But then amongst it, there's tragedy, and her brother is killed in a car accident. And he makes this video which really promotes that she is so talented and she should go. And he's made this for her. So she ends up kind of defying her parents and going to this school and making it there, I guess. Yeah, and so I love the music in that as well. And certainly that's another one that I played repeat over and over and over and learnt so many songs to it. There's good old songs like Walking on Sunshine and things like that. But then there's some other beautiful songs like Somebody's Watching Over Me, and that refers to her brother, of course, that had died in the film. Yeah, there's some amazing pieces in that. The band 3 Days Grace is in there as well. So that's the other one. And I'll just quickly name the other two without going into it too much. When I was young, I used to watch over and over the Karen Carpenter Story. That's a 1989 film. And of course goes through not only the great music of the time, which another one I sang over and over. As you can tell, I love music in many genres, not just one. But it goes into her life, and why it's not just called the Carpenter Story is because it goes into Karen's story of not only her amazing gifting in singing and what they achieved as the Carpenters, but her eating disorders of bulimia and anorexia and what impact that had on her life. And I just always found that fascinating. But the pressures of the music world can have great effects on people, and what they have to give up to make it, especially, you know, back in the day. It's a bit of a different world out there. I think it was just fascinating to me, but I really enjoyed that music at the time as well. And the last one I'll mention is Coyote Ugly, full of great music, and is about a young songwriter or aspiring songwriter who has to move, I think it's to New York by memory, and, you know, has to work to make a living so she can do her songwriting and all the fun stuff that comes with the Coyote Ugly bar while she's doing it. So,
and great performance by John Goodman in that as a dad as well. So
he is an awesome cast member.
Yeah.
So they are mine. I guess I have a bit of a girly feel to the ones that I choose compared to you guys.
Nothing wrong with that.
Those are awesome choices. I've got to say,
they're the ones that I was stood out.
With the A Star Is Born, going back to that, I was actually very surprised in the same way that surprised the lead could sing, but I was surprised that Lady Gaga could act. Because like I actually thought that she was better and a better actor in the movie than Bradley Cooper was. Like the dramatic scenes and stuff like that. I mean, Bradley Cooper wasn't bad in the movie, but I just thought that she was so good in it that it was like she was a professional actor, not.
Yeah, I think for her character though had kind of more range to work through. From memory, I think Bradley Cooper was very much stuck in a kind of state of being. Yeah. And it was kind of her reacting to that, like go through the whole cycle of her dreams and ambitions. And,
I always remember that he's like doing the dry crying kind of thing. It's like, where you got tears, Bradley? You're better than that.
I just remember him pissing himself in the film.
Oh yeah,
now
that he could do.
It's such a
that he could do, no problem.
In fact, the ending, if you haven't yet watched this film, you do need tissues, and I don't care if you're a man or not. You know, you probably will need tissues for this one.
Yeah. All right. So Kyle, what are your favorite films about musicians?
Yeah, it's the same thing where there's a lot of biopics about a lot of different musicians, and there was kind of a period of time where a lot of them were coming out kind of in the early 2000s, and they were all very sometimes they were all very similar. So kind of out of that, one of my favorite movies about a musician was actually a movie that parodied all that stuff, and that was Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story.
Oh, yeah.
With John C. Reilly, one that like it primarily makes fun of movies like Ray and Walk the Line.
Yeah.
But it also just parodies a whole bunch of other musicians like the Beatles, Jerry Lee Lewis, Roy Orbison, and like Neil Diamond, Jim Morrison, The Doors, all like it. It kind of casts a wide net in the stuff that it's making fun of, but I think because the storyline of these movies, of a lot of these biopics, had actually become um so standard that it was able to just parody, like this one movie was able to parody all these different things. It was kind of like Scary Movie in that way, that like by basically just copying the story of one of these movies, it was able to just become a parody of all these different type of all these different comedian all these different
Yeah.
all these different musicians. And I mean, it has a great cast in as well, like Kristen Wiig and Tim Meadows have shown up in it. But John C. Riley, I think he gives such a good performance in it, because people forget that before he kind of made it with like Step Brothers and stuff like that. He was much more known as a dramatic actor in oh god, in like Paul Thomas Anderson movies, and like Boogie Nights and those kind of things. Like he was much more of a drama guy. So he actually does give like a really good performance in this movie, like really emotional performance in the movie, because he kind of plays a lot of the parts straight. Um, and yeah, the songs in it were great as well. Yeah, making most of the more popular ones were kind of making fun of like Johnny Cash songs and stuff like that. But yeah, that was one that I really enjoyed. Another one that I really liked is more of a fictional story. It's still called Still Crazy. I don't know if you guys know that movie.
Sounds
It's a
familiar.
late 90s British comedy movie. It has Stephen Ree, Billy Connolly, and Bill Nye in it.
Ah.
It's kind of it's it's one of the first things that I'd ever seen Bill Nye in. I mean, the movie came out in 1998, and he was playing an old rocker in that, like 25 years ago or so, and he was playing like an old guy in that movie. Um, but yeah, it's about a like a 70s rock band of that break up, and then in the late 90s they kind of, for whatever reason, they kind of get the idea to do like a reunion tour. And it's about like all of them kind of putting up with their the conflict that they had that kind of caused them all to break up in the first place. Um, and also, yeah, there's just a lot of comedy in it that it was really funny. Like, Bill, there's I can't do it on the radio because it's got swearing in it. But like Bill Nye, kind of like pumping himself up in front of the in front of the mirror, for one of the first times he's gone on stage in like 20 years or something, and like, oh yeah, you're the man, you're the man. And he like tries to do like a pump his fist in the air, and he like pulls a muscle, and he just messes him up. It's a pretty short movie, unfortunately. Like that, if I had one problem with it, it's only 90 odd minutes, and it's because of that, the like when you introduce all the characters and they get all back together, and then they start going out and touring again, and like the first places that they play, it's a complete cluster F. It just is complete mess, and then they have some good luck, and then they get really popular again after that, and kind of they confront the issues that they all had back in the 70s with each other. But it kind of steamrolls through it really quickly. Like it's a movie that I think could have been 2 hours and would have been a much better film for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, this
I
movie's
have a
coming.
feeling I actually have seen this, but
I,
I'm gonna check it out again. I'm pretty sure I
yeah,
remember seeing that. Yeah.
it's one I really enjoyed it. It's yeah, Still Crazy. Like I said, it's Timothy Spall, Bill Nye, Billy Connolly, all of them are great in it. And yeah, it's just one of those. It's another one that kind of there's so there's so many kind of like old bands getting back together now.
Yeah.
And yeah, like back then it wasn't really as much of a thing that like seeing a movie kind of parodying it would have been more like quite as known. I think it was directed by Brian Gibson, who had done the What's Love Got to Do with It? I believe he directed that. So
yeah.
yeah, like I'm pretty sure he directed that. Yeah, so like he kind of had like a history with like musical movies as well. So yeah, he was able to kind of translate that into this kind of late 90s comedy. So yeah, it's a pretty fun movie. So those are mine too. I guess it kind of says something, but like my two favorite like movies about music, they're not really serious ones about serious musicians, as they're actually both comedies. But yeah, those two are actually my favorites.
And Harley, what are your favorites?
Well, I know because you're going to mention a TV series. I'll get a couple of things out of the way in that regard. um, I Rock. I used to watch that. I think it was on ABC. Um, that was fun. It's again a fictional piece that you know, this guy getting an opportunity to launch his rock career or with the band or whatever. Just the fact that he was sort of was doing nothing for it, like he was his own worst enemy, like trying to get himself launched. He was so lazy. I don't know. It was just a great dynamic watching that. It just makes you so self-aware when you have these dreams. But there's also the mini series, The Jacksons: An American Dream. I grew up loving the Jacksons and Michael Jackson and Janet Jackson, the whole family, brilliant. So I remember being so hyped hearing about it being made. And then you even have like Angela Bassett playing Catherine Jackson, their mum. So I'm like, okay, this is really fascinating. So that was great for me as a child watching that, being, people I knew about and admired, and then seeing how they got to where they are. Like, I think it's a fascinating story. So we'll go down the biopic part now, as Kyle mentioned. What's Love Got to Do with It? The Tina Turner story. I found that fascinating. I think I saw it when it was new, but I didn't really remember it. Then I saw it some years later, very actively watching it, thinking, wow, I can actually take in her story now. I'm a little bit more mature than I was at the time it came out. I found it really fascinating. I think I started to develop a bit of a love for, seeing the backstories of especially musicians. I don't know what it is. Finding what kind of drives them is really interesting. The whole relationship she had with their husband, Ike, was just horrible. Seeing her come through that and become a bigger star on her own than ever before, like I think that's a fascinating story. More recently, there was the Tony Braxton Unbreak My Heart biopic. After all these years of kind of secretly dealing with lupus and stuff, it's quite interesting to have her story laid out there. I thought the actress who played her was pretty good as well. But again, like, I can kind of see what Kyle was saying, that a lot of these movies start to follow a bit of a formula
Yeah.
now. But I don't know. I think just because I'm a big fan of hers and she was very present in my mind at the time, I thought I had to see this. So it was good to see that whole journey, because I loved her when she first came out. Then she kind of disappeared off my radar a little bit. And then, she was back in. So it was good to see that story, having the gaps filled in for me. There's another one that's based on true events. I think it's called The Green Book. It's got Mahershala Ali.
Yes. Yep.
And yeah, very much of a not so great time in America with racial segregation and stuff like this. But you have Mahershala playing this guy who is like a great musician. He's got his own like theater and stuff that he's performing in, and he gets booked around the country, but even he goes to the deep south, and he has to hire this guy who acts as like a bodyguard and kind of not an agent, but someone who handles things for him, which is all. It's really interesting because she's going to these like deep south locations, and there's only certain places that African Americans are allowed to eat at or stop at or do anything at. It's really quite disturbing to see that, even though he's almost revered by the people he's going to perform for, but then the way they still treat him despite that, just because of his skin color, it's really interesting. Yeah, look, I definitely recommend people look up the Green Book. Then from there, we're going to go into the not so true stories. I have to mention this is Spinal Tap. I mean, that's the one that started
I
it
knew
all, and I
somebody would,
still
so that's why I didn't
still
mention
love it. Like, I'd totally forgotten about it until a few minutes ago. I'm like, oh, someone's got to mention it, but
Yeah.
I'm going to get there first. That is so much fun. There's actually a lot of the British comedians and comedy actors in the sort of 80s, I think it was, had a series called The Comic Strip Presents, because they were kind of called The Comic Strip. And they did a kind of similar thing where they did two installments of it, where it was a fake band going around and trying to get their success, and they even went to a big festival, and they had actual famous musicians being interviewed there saying how awful this band was. It was just like, that's the most self-indulgent piece of whatever I've ever seen, and it was so funny watching that. I can't think of what the band was called now, but I look up The Comic Strip Presents. It's a great series for parodying things. One of the characters I remember, I think it was in the second part of the story. They went back and did kind of a sequel. The band had split up because they were just hopeless, and one of them went and lived out in the middle of nowhere, and he's like, yeah, I'm in communion with the ghost of John Lennon, and he inspired me with this great new song, and it's a song about a woman called Imogen. And he's like, I'll play a bit for you. Imagine all the people. So, completely, like, this is how pathetic these guys are. They just run with some really half-assed things. It was so funny. I recommend people check out that series, not just for that storyline, but there's so many good things that they pulled up on there. If you remember the famous 5 books, Enid Blyton, I think it was.
Yeah.
They do parodies of those as well. It's really funny. They're on Netflix. I really like a movie called I Used to Be Famous. And it's where this kind of failed musician, I think he was in a boy band or something, he went solo and just hasn't been able to do anything with his music. He's just about homeless at this point, and he decides he's going to keep going on the street and busking. He's got a new song he wants to try out. No one's really paying any attention to him. He's got this old like keyboard or whatever, and it's everything he owns is like falling apart, so he has to bring an ironing board, which is also falling apart, to play his keyboard on out in the middle of the street. It's like a real down and out story. And then there's this autistic kid who comes along and starts drumming along with him, and which at first annoys the crap out of him, but then he kind of hears how good the kid is, and everyone starts watching the kid, and it's like, hang on, I think there's something in this. So he starts trying to get involved with the kid and putting an act together, and then he starts teaching at the group where all these autistic kids come together and learn about music and things. And it's a really good story. Kind of, you kind of wonder, is he just out for himself, or does he genuinely care about this kid? Like there's this sort of conflicts of interest there. It's a really good and gripping story. That's I used to be famous on Netflix. I have to give a shout out to Blues Brothers. I don't care if it's not exactly
Oh,
accurate. Yeah.
I can't believe I didn't mention that. Jeez.
Yeah.
Seen
I
it at the
love
Astor
Blues
like
Brothers. Oh,
15
like
times, man.
yeah.
Yeah.
That is like the greatest thing ever, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
I love those characters. I even love the sequel, which I'm sure most people are kind of like, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
But
It
no,
had its
I love it.
moments.
The music's great. The characters are just so wonderful. Like I can never get sick of the Blues Brothers movies. I'm gonna give a shout out to The Commitment as well. I don't know if anyone remembers that one. It was pretty big at the time. The greatest band that never was kind of thing. Um, and it's been quite a few years since I watched that actually. I think I'm gonna go back and watch that one if I get a chance. But top of my list, absolute all-time favorite music movie is Bandits. I've mentioned it before. I think it's a German movie about these women in prison. Three of them have formed a band, and then a new woman comes in, and they figure out, oh, she's a really good drummer, and they include her in the band. And they're kind of mistreated during a trip where they're being allowed to play for the policeman's ball kind of thing. And they're mistreated by the guard that's looking after them, and one of them has a real temper issue and beats the crap out of the guard, and then they go on the run. And while they're on the run, they decide to start playing performances, and they get a huge following all around Germany because of their music. They'd sent a demo disc to a record company to try and get signed, and of course, the record company totally ignored them until they became something on the news. And so they went and started demanding money because this company was launching album with their pictures and details all over it. So yeah, that I think that is all-time favorite and best music related film, Bandits. On to you, David.
Also, yeah, so I've got a few, so I'll try and get through them as quickly as possible. Of course, there's some Aussie films in there. Dingo, which is about an Aboriginal jazz performer. One Perfect Day, Garage Days, which are great ones as well about musos. But probably my all-time favorites. I'm going to put Queen of the Damned in there because Lestat is a heavy rock metal musician.
Yep.
In Queen of the Damned. I also love a Scottish film called Creation Stories, which is about the beginnings of Creation Records, which was a punk alternative label that's got Ewan Bremer in it, and it's well worth a look. It came out in a couple of years ago now, I think. I really like We Are Your Friends, the Zac Efron film, which is based on a real story of a DJ who decided to use sounds from everyday life in his music, and it looks at how he got ripped off when he first went into the music scene. It's one of those films people wrote off because of Zac Efron being in it, but it ended up being a really, really good film. I'm also going to mention The Young Person's Guide to Being a Rock Star, which is a British series starring Simone Lebib, which was a great little mini series that looked at a young band who were nothing and then all of a sudden became big, and then how they had to deal with that. There's Band Slam. Again, another movie that kind of got written off because of who was in it. People thought it was just a Vanessa Hudgens kind of High School Musical spin-off, but it was actually a pretty good movie about a boy being bullied, trying to discover music. Almost Famous, which I think is my all-time favorite.
Yeah.
Absolutely love that film about Cameron Crowe's career as a music journalist and where it first started with Rolling Stone. I love Control, which is the film which is about the story of Ian Curtis, the lead singer of Joy Division. I really like Studio 666, the horror film featuring the Foo Fighters, who go to a mansion to work on their brand new album, and then murders start happening, and we have the brilliant line did you just say no to Dave Grohl? like in the film. There's a film called You Instead that I really love as well, which is about it's a British film starring Natalia Tena from Harry Potter and Luke Treadaway, who play two rock stars who hate each other, who go to play at a music festival, and their friends handcuff them together to try and get them to solve the issues that they have with each other. There's also Whiplash, which I love, with Miles Teller and J.K. Simmons, where Miles Teller plays a gifted young jazz drummer, and J.K. Simmons plays his kind of abusive teacher. And
oh yeah, that's brilliant. I saw that recently. Love that.
It is. It's pretty full on too.
Yeah, and one that
yeah.
one that I would put right up there with Almost Famous is Inside Llewellyn Davis, which stars Oscar Isaac and a very, very cute cat.
I was gonna say, and it
as
stars
well.
a cat.
Yeah.
The Coen Brothers
and
one,
John
yeah.
Goodman again as well.
Yeah,
so
that's a really good movie too, actually.
but yeah, so that
Blues
is
Brothers 2000 also has John Goodman. See, there's a theme here.
yeah.
Best John Goodman films.
So that is our list of best films revolving around music. Hope you liked it. Go and check some of them out, and we'll be back in just a moment on centralcoastradio.com.